Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. Usually we do this on Monday, right here at twitch.tv/Wrestling Underground. But last night I decided I wanted to check out. Here it is. I was looking for the tab with the tweet and I couldn't find it. Last night I wanted to check out the Browns game. Full disclosure, I no longer cover Cleveland sports. I am now covering the Utah Jazz due to a shift in coverage. So that's now my primary focus, go Jazz. And I can safely say this now that I am rooting for the Browns to lose. Simply because Deshaun Watson is a predator, and I hope he gets hit by a fucking bus. A caravan of buses. Dare I say, a gaggle of buses. Although last night...
My bad, wrong predator.
If you watched the game last night, though, Marcus, it did look like you got hit by a gaggle of buses. Buses named T.J. Watt. Sadly, though, while I want this regime to lose and die a slow, painful death, it doesn't mean I don't like certain players still, Nick Chubb being one of them. Had the nastiest knee injury I've ever seen in my life. And I watched the 2002 OSU Miami Hurricanes game where Willis McGahee had his knee... What's the clinic? Exploded. And I thought that was the worst knee injury I've ever seen. So hey, you know.
I'm glad we're kicking this off with some sports talk because I can ask you this and get a quality answer because you've been so embedded in it practically your whole life. Is this the craziest of one of the craziest stints of the first 2 weeks of an opening season in the NFL you've ever seen?
Yes.
Yeah. I felt like that.
So, like, listen, I like Baker. I've never been, like, his biggest supporter, but I defended him when it was called for, and I criticized when it was called for. I thought he'd do well in Tampa because he's a good quarterback. Like, he's not bad. He was a top 10 quarterback in 2020. But I didn't think he'd be playing this well in Tampa. I didn't think Tampa would be 2-0. But yet, here they are, and Baker looks like an MVP candidate through 2 weeks. It's only 2 weeks. Like, nothing's substantially in stone yet, other than, like, the Bengals are fucked. Although they were 0-2 last year and came back. This is a wild-ass season so far. I think there's going to be a lot of parity, only because I think people are starting to realize that this conglomerate of quote-unquote great quarterbacks that we've been experiencing the last few years has always been overhyped because of the rule changes in the NFL. I still believe there's only like 3 to 5 truly franchise-great quarterbacks at any given time.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that still play out. So
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see so many African American starters. But yeah, when you start talking about, conversation with using the word elite, this, that, and the third. Just the whole scope of the game of football seems crazy right now. We got not even talking about the plan, just to look at the media coverage of it. We got Stephen A and Shannon together.
Yeah.
Then Shannon's doing a weekly nightcap with Ocho.
Then he gets Skip doing his quarterback rendition.
Quarterback, that's great.
That's from Psych. I full credit to Psych. Sean was with Gus and 2 of Gus's I think they were black fraternity friends. And he was the only white guy, so he was like, guys, we're going to call ourselves Quarter Black. And everyone's like, that's a great idea. But Gus is like, that's a terrible idea. You're the only one who's not black. And Sean goes, but it doesn't work the other way, Gus.
Hilarious, yeah. Like, it was sad to see Shannon leave, but he's better, I think, with Stephen A. And that open slot leaves a lot more room to get more Michael Irvin, who was a whole character in himself.
That dude's still so, like, that doesn't hurt.
It was good, crazy. I remember he did this interview, I think, with the show The Pivot with Ryan Clark. I think you're probably familiar. And there was some segment in there, but the clip went viral, and I guess he was in the middle of the conversation. I forgot what he was talking about, but then he just bust out, started shaking, and went, "My CTE acting up." Like,
Jesus Christ.
It's just like, hold on, wait a minute, my CTE. I'm like, this dude is nuts. But even beyond that, it feels like even with all these crazy 2 weeks that we've seen, like the thing with Aaron Rodgers is disappointing. Crazy. Patrick Mahomes is like on a different level now. Like that guaranteed amount that he got is nuts, but well deserved. On top of the injuries that you just laid out and mentioned. Um, and even still, with everything going on in the NFL, the hottest football team out right now still feels like Colorado.
I will say this: I wasn't a big fan of Dion and the way he went about shifting the players around at the start of his tenure in college, but I think he's done nothing but really showcase himself as a true stand-up dude with the way
Yeah,
he's been handling that team. I don't like that he's like, if you want to, like, get out. Like, I was like, because like for me, a coach should be coaching up players to be better, not just finding better players. So I feel like he kind of like let himself down a bit because like I don't feel like this dude gives up some on people, like just the way he talks and the way he goes about things. But I will say I'm definitely now rooting for the Colorado Buffaloes, but I don't. They're gonna have at least 4 losses this year. They were so bad last year before he came in, and I don't think the talent he brought in was so dramatically and dynamically better than what he's, because he got to face USC and Oregon still. So it's like that's a maybe he knocks one off, maybe, but he's gonna find himself in a meat grinder because like CSU, Colorado State, I think was like one in something or other last year or two. Like they weren't good, and he
yeah,
struggled against them. So like I'm not going to sit here and be like, ugh, yeah, they're going to the national title game, but I'm also not going to sit here and be like, they're going to lose every game either. Like, they're going to go, I don't know how many games they're playing. If they're playing 12, they go 8-4. If they're playing 13, they'll go 7-5. Like, they're going to lose some games this year, but they're going to look good. And considering this
yeah,
was a program that was winless last year, 500 or
yeah.
better, bowl eligible or better, that's the goal. And if he can hit it, then he's right on track to where he should be. So good on Coach Prime. I could do without all the celebrityism on the sidelines. It's like, ugh, all right,
Yeah.
like we're
Yes.
and I'm seeing like some of these rappers. I'm like, who?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Calvin
I mean,
Eyes? Who's that?
it's incredible to see the amount of support that he's getting from the community and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, because it's a lot, and but he does feel like somebody said like he was born to do this, like he was born to kind of teach and coach and kind of lead young men in that regard. And it's funny you talk about, I guess, his coaching style or whatever, because he was sitting, I think it was I want to say it was the Rich Eisen show he was on. He was talking about I guess kind of how he goes after players. He was like a running back. You kind of want to get them from a nice two-parent home, whatnot, good head on their shoulders, good direction, whatnot. He's like, but a D lineman, yeah, I need him to be missing his dad in the house, to be
Jesus
damn near
Christ!
completely impoverished, and really trying to get his mom out of his mom out of a bad situation because it feeds that hunger and that motivation and anger that you kind of need to be able to channel on the field. So it's interesting hearing that mentality, but
That's funny.
yeah, he's got the eye of the whole zeitgeist right now.
So we will touch on Colorado more next week. Let's get into Impact 1000. The
Yeah.
show's not going to be complicated. Talking about Impact 1000. We're going to preview Impact 1000 Part 2, aka Impact 1001. And then we're going to look at a little bit of tidbits from Impact. There was going to be a lot more on the show, but I am on cat taking care of duties this week. And
Mm.
I need to go and handle that after the show. So I can't be on here for an hour and a half talking about the shitstorm that is some of these OVW talents. That's going to be for next week. Um, but with that being said, let's get into this. I didn't watch BTI, so I didn't see Kylan King versus Jody Threat. But Jody Threat got the win. I think Jody Threat has tremendous potential. And I'm a little agitated that like we're still giving Jessica Havoc screen time, even though she's unathletic. She's. I would like to apologize to what I'm about to say about Jessica Havoc to Jessica Havoc because it's not as bad as the comparison I'm going to make, but it's up there. Aside from Nia Jax, the only person I can compare both women to in terms of what they are in the ring is Tyrus.
Okay, let me just try to go back to my classic days as the new guy on the show and try to salvage this and try to
There's no
overstep.
salvaging. I know what I said. And I'm
Try to
going to defend it.
overstep. No, not even trying to correct you, but maybe trying to bring in, I guess, a less crappier thing to compare it to. Where would you compare them? Because I've been meaning to ask you about her for a while. what would you compare the two of them to maybe somebody like Lady Tapper?
Oh, I'd rather watch Lady Tapper.
Gotcha.
She's a better athlete. She moves better in the ring. She's not like aware, like, and none of the three women in this scenario are aware. They don't have any real ring awareness. They stumble over themselves. They stumble over their opponents. They're not athletic. Their size makes them a bit harder to watch, simply because when you are a larger individual, you need to be very comfortable with your frame, and you need to be working on your movements. They stutter step. They slip on themselves. They're slow. They're lethargic. And, like, listen, we've seen big athletes before. Awesome Kong's one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time. You know, you look at someone like Bam Bam Bigelow or Vader. They were fantastic, but all three knew how to work. Maybe it was the Japanese influence. Because, like, now thinking back to it, Vader, Bam Bam, and Awesome Kong all developed very well in Japan before they became stars in the United States. So, like, maybe that was a factor in why they were better at movement and more athletic with their frames. I don't know if Jessica Havoc's ever had a long stay in Japan, at least at the more modernized version, because she's been wrestling for a while. I remember watching her in 2010 at a Cleveland All Pro Wrestling event, and she looked dramatically different. I've never seen a good Nia Jax match, ever. I've never seen a good Jessica Havoc match, ever. I've never seen a good Tyrus match, ever. So, the original point was, I don't know why we're forcing Jessica Havoc onto us every week when you have a gimmick in Jody Threat that's on par with what they're doing Courtney Rush. And I don't know why we're shoehorning a very unathletic, very poor-moving wrestler into a tag team with Courtney Rush, who is still one of the more dynamic personalities on the roster. Granted, she herself has lost a step. But then again, she's had some nasty knee injuries over the years, so, like, that's not unsurprising. But you could put Jody Threat in there, instantly improve the lineup, allow Courtney Rush to have less of a necessity to be in the ring, so you can prolong her career. Give Jody Threat the rub, because the other thing that bothers me with Havoc is, like, this isn't year 1 or 2. This isn't even the second run with Jessica Havoc. We are now in the third or fourth incarnation of her in this company, and they're still trying to get her over? Let's just be honest about this. The only reason she has a job is because she was dating and or is married to Sami Callihan. She's not good. She's not popular. She's not well-liked. She's not someone that people rave about online. Behind the scenes or otherwise. She's Britt Baker 2.0. She's Mike Bennett 2.0. They have a job because of who they're with. Yeah, I'm saying Mike Bennett only has a job because of Maria, and I have no problem with that.
I don't know if he would. But
he better know that. That's why he has a job.
That's not a bad narrative. I just recently watched a clip about circa 2006 backstage DX segment when Maria was still doing that ditzy interview gimmick. She's come leaps and bounds from that. But quick question: give me about a percentage of how much you think the consistency and visibility that we're getting with Havoc is due to her association with Rosemary.
Well, I would say it's 100. I would say, like, without Rosemary and Courtney Rush, I don't think we're getting Jessica Havoc on TV at all. But I don't know if that's necessarily because of Courtney Rush advocating for Jessica Havoc, or if they just think that these two make a good tandem. But then again, like, I look at this roster, and I think there's a lot of people on this roster that if I had control of this company, I would fire day up. Giselle Shaw being one of them. I've given her a chance. I thought, when was it? They did a Canadian show. Maybe 2018, 2017. And I want to say, like, it was Eric Young and Scott D'Amore and somebody else in the main event. Maybe A1 in the main event. And, like, Giselle Shaw, like, this is the first time I remember seeing her under an Impact banner, was an independent Canadian talent at the time. I think she's, like, from South America, but she was living in Canada and wrestling in Canada. And, like, I don't know who this is, but, like, give her time, she could develop. That was 5-6 years ago, and she's still very meh in the ring. And if she was getting like Lish roles, like Alicia Edwards, where she was like popping up as a side character, or like as like an accoutrement to a stable, okay, that's fine. But she's like being promoted front and center as like a top talent, and I'm like, do what? Do what?
Yeah, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about, because I remember when I first kind of, I guess, took notice of her, she had a match with Lady Frost. And now that you're talking about, I'm wondering if, like you said, if you had control, would you have back then? Well, I guess the way it ended up with, would you have kept Lady Frost and gotten rid of her, or?
If it was a 1-for-1, where I had to get rid of one for the other, yes. Lady Frost, I think, is a lot more talented. That being said, I didn't think Lady Frost was overly talented to begin with. Compared to Giselle Shaw, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But like, I don't think Impact is missing out because they don't have Lady Frost. Let's see. I think it was called. Here we go. It was the BCW 25, and she wrestled Kira Hogan on the show. It was a hell of a show. It was Scarlett Bordeaux and Stone Rockwell defeating Eli Drake and Casey Spinelli. There's another name I wish we could see more of. We had the Doug Chevalier Memorial Gauntlet match with Matrox defeating Brad Martin, Conrad III, Dustin Quicksilver, Fabio Morocco, Kurt Hendrick, Mr. Atlantis, Nate Madsen, Rico Montana, Sheldon Jean. There's a name we recognize. Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz. Kira Hogan defeated Giselle Shaw. David Arquette and RJ City defeated Halal Beefcake, which was Idris Abraham and Joe Goldman. Chris Sabin, Petey Williams, and Tyson Dukes defeated OVE. That's the Chris Brothers and Sammy Callahan. D'Lo Brown, Robbie McAllister, and Tommy Dreamer defeated the Syndicate of Johnny Swinger, John Bolin, and Scott D'Amore. Then we also had the BCW Can-Am Tag Team match with Aiden Prince, Brett Banks defeating Jake Something and Phil Atlas. Moose defeated Eddie Edwards in a street fight. The main event saw Cody Diener defeat Johnny Impact and Congo Kong and Matt Sydal in a four corners match. So this is a pretty impressive match for because like BCW's South Canada's OVW for people who don't know. So like this is like a huge show considering the company. But anyway,
Yeah,
back to the Impact 1000.
yeah, back
Jody
to
Threat deserves more than what she's getting.
Yeah, that's no, you're not wrong about that. Cause this is a great prelude into all of us going into that grand first segment. But real quick, back to Shaw, getting rid of Shaw. Now, do you do the thing that WWE did with Hit Row, where they got rid of the front guy, and then left the rest of the founder? Because obviously we talked about the last show how you would like to elevate. Blanking on the name.
Savannah.
The young Heaven. Yeah, Savannah Evans, and then obviously along with her is the guy.
Jay Vidal.
Yeah, because it almost feels like they look at them, and this is a great transition into the first segment. It almost like the company looks at them as this generation's beautiful people.
Yeah, I see that comparison. The problem is I don't think Jay Vidal works in this character. I don't know if this was more his personality or not, but I feel like Jay Vidal would do a lot better with maybe Mahabali Shera or what's his name? Bhupinder?
Yeah.
Bhupinder. I think tagging him up with another Indian athlete, maybe another Indian Canadian athlete, might be a better way to go, because for whatever reason, regional tag teams like the Machine Guns, they're best friends and from Detroit. That's their shtick. That does well, right? Like the Freebirds, they're all from the South. That kind of idea of that closeness, brother tag teams. Sometimes when you talk about intergender stuff, you look at married tag teams. Those always seem to do the best. So I think finding someone with that Jay Vidal nose in the industry, maybe he's like, just for instance, maybe he's really close with Sheldon Jean. That could work. Maybe he's really close with Bhupinder Gujar, I think is what his name is. That could work. But I don't like the stable because it feels very forced. I think Giselle Shaw is being... I think his name is Sam Howell. He's the Washington Commanders quarterback, and he's being thrown out there. And he's okay, but he's not great. But, like, he's the best they got, and I feel like that's kind of what's happening with Giselle Shaw. They're putting her front and center in this group, and I don't know if they think she's great or if they think that she's the best they got for this gimmick, but they're trying to make her off like she's Angelina Love or Angelina Love or Scarlett Bordeaux, and it's like she's not. Not in terms of like the way she looks, and not in the way in terms of the way she wrestles. She's better than Bordeaux in the ring, that's for sure. But she's not this big name. And I don't know why they're and it's not just these. It's not her and Jessica Havoc only. There are some male wrestlers I scratch my head when I see getting like the good hands. Like, are we still trying? Like, why is Black Taurus still on the roster when he's done nothing in 3 years? Not even when he was with Decay. He wasn't even a good heavy. He was just there. So I feel like we need to cut some of these guys loose and really invest in either getting someone like an Alexander Hammerstone or Jacob Fatu, someone who has a lot of credibility coming off the indies, or building up some of these younger guys like Ryan Gals, like Sheldon Jean and Jody Threat. I think that needs to be the point right now, because Giselle Shaw, we know what she is. We know what her apex is. We know what the best she can do in the ring is. And it's unimpressive. It's not bad. She's not Nia Jax or Nyla Rose, where they're hurting people. But she's also not very exciting either. Very boring. And like, that's almost worse than being someone like Nia Jax or Nyla Rose or somebody else who's bigger and hits harder and may hurt somebody. Because at least then you're like, all right, morbidly, is there gonna be a car crash? Are we gonna see something terrible? You don't get that. She's too good to be a train wreck, but not good enough to be featured player, and that's kind of where we're at. And at 34 years old, I don't think she's going to get there. I think what we got is what we got. So let's move on though. Let's talk about.
Speaking of what we got, it's a big segment. Kicked off the show.
Yeah, a huge segment. We got, I don't want to say every major knockout, but a lot of them. So, I'll spare you the details, but it was pretty much like a game of Tetris. Scott Demora comes out, then Gail Kim comes out, then I think it was Deanna Purrazzo, then it was Jordan Grace, and yada, yada, yada. Eventually, we formed two teams of 5. We had Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, with Raisha Saeed, cheerleader Melissa. They also had Trinity, Jordan Grace, and Mickie James. She's back. And then the other side had Giselle Shaw, Deanna Purrazzo, the returning Tasha Steelz. And then Angelina Love. Velvet Sky was also back. And then who was the 5th woman on that team?
Deanna, beautiful people.
Oh, it was it's Masha. It's not Masha. It's Savannah Evans. She's the 5th wrestler of the squad.
Oh, okay.
I forgot because they didn't really give her any due diligence or hype.
Like, you don't get no lines, cuz.
It's like that Robin Williams and Elmo skit where Robin Williams gives him a stick and Elmo goes, "Thanks, Mr. Robbins," and Robin Williams goes, "What?" And then, like, Elmo pulls himself into the hole and goes, "I only had 3 lines." That was Savannah Evans.
It was such a great segment to see because all the women, they really gave you a physical representation of the history of the knockouts from past, present, and future. It was great to see. But it did get to a point where it was like, come out, line. I wonder who's next.
Yeah.
Music. Yeah. Come out, line. I wonder who's next.
It was a little formulaic. It was still great to see them all, though. Like, cheerleader Melissa as Raisha Shade would not work today if they're a bigger brand because she's a white girl. And Raisha Shade's not. But, like, Kong was great. You can tell she's hurting. You can tell why she's not right. Like just her gait when she was walking to the ring, you're like, oh, her knees must be hurting. Which I'm not surprised. Like, she was wrestling like 200 matches a year in her prime. That can't be easy. But I think she's going to be well protected in this match. The only complaint I have is, I really like Savannah Evans. I think there's potential there. Especially in a feud with Jordan Grace. After you build her up. But I was really disappointed that we didn't get Taylor Wilde, who, if I remember correctly, was the first person to beat Awesome Kong in Impact. And for her not to be a part of this, but to shoehorn Velvet and Savannah Evans, one in Velvet who doesn't wrestle and never wrestled well, and two in Savannah who is kind of like out of place. Because like Giselle's the front and center of the heels at the moment. Deanna is a walking icon. Angelina's a legend who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Who was the other person in the? And Tasha Steele's a former champion. Then you look over at the faces. Jordan's a former champ. Gail's the greatest to ever do it. Trinity's the current champ. Awesome Kong's one of the greatest to ever do it. And Mickey's one of the greatest to ever do it. So like, Savannah Evans feels like she's severely out of place in this segment.
And to your point, I wonder if they had, and I'm hoping they went with like, because obviously everything seems so great now because it seems like everything is thought out and planned ahead of time, like with a good time in between instead of just last minute everything gets thrown together. If they had like a whiteboard and they came up with the names and either it came down to either scheduling or they just had to come down with a concise number, and like it's kind of hard to not have the beautiful people with their history, and it almost came off, speaking of Evans' point, as a bit of convenience because you kind of get 2 for 1 with her and Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, hopefully we get names like because I would imagine there's still some surprises, even though obviously you got some spoilers on Twitter, and this is going to be the primary thing on the second show. But maybe they'll be able to sprinkle some surprise in there, some stuff with some backstage segments. Because we did see some folks that we had mentioned we wanted to see in some backstage segments, so maybe they'll save it for that. But like, yeah, to your point, Taylor Wilde is probably one of the more slept on knockouts in terms of what she did in her prime when the company in the company's heyday. So yeah, to your point, they do need to incorporate her some way. It also would be great if they could have did something with Tara, but like I said, you can't get everybody.
No. If you look at, say, like the Memphis Grizzlies franchise, right? If you look at the Memphis Grizzlies franchise, and you look at someone like Mike Conley, you got Paul Gasol, Shane Battier, Mark Gasol, John Morant, a lot of great players come through there. No one would say Mike Conley is the best to ever do it, but he was an integral part of the team, and I feel like that's Taylor Wilde. She's not the best knockout to ever do it, but she was very good for this brand for very long. And apparently she hasn't wrestled since July. So maybe like she's not available because she is a firefighter. So maybe she's like doing firefighter stuff.
Oh wait a minute! I don't know why I'm blanking on it because she's in a tag team, the Witch tag team, right?
With Kylan King.
Yeah, which is it don't seem like it's been that long since we've seen them. No, since July.
That's the last time she wrestled. At least that's the last time she wrestled for a televised match.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, that kind of lets you know how busy they keep the division that I didn't even notice. But that's why. That's pun intended. That's no pun intended. That is kind of seem kind of wild that she's been there recently and wasn't thrown out here.
She may be. She may have appeared on a few episodes in August from what was filmed in July. But yeah, she hasn't wrestled since the end of July. But she also has a son. And she's married, she's a firefighter. So, like, she's got things going on. So I don't blame anyone if she's, like, currently booked up. I do hope that she returns soon. And personally, I think putting Kylan King in the same group that Masha and Killer Kelly are in makes for better TV. I think that'd be a hell of a violent trio. And I think Taylor Wilde can find something to do as a solo star. I think they need a third belt in that division, truthfully. And I wouldn't mind seeing that happen with Taylor because I think she deserves it. But, that's just me. After that, we got Eric Young being reunited with AMW. They had a strong feud in late 2004, early 2005. I want to say the Canadians actually took the belts off AMW, and I think it was Eric Young and Bobby Roode who did it. So, like, seeing those three back together was great. Chris Harris has had a slew of health issues. That was kind of the whole, like, storyline between his return to the ring and last year's Slammiversary, I think. So I'm glad to see that he's, still doing his thing. James Storm looks fantastic. Then we have Shark Boy, of all people, popped up with Santino Marella, and Santino made him the Deputy Director of Authority. And I really hope they keep Shark Boy around longer than 2 weeks, because he's always a treat to watch. I don't necessarily want to see him wrestle, at least not in anything significant or serious. Like, maybe 10 years ago, 15, well, let's go back 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. Yeah, definitely. Shark Boy could move back then. He's pushing 50, if not already 50. He's overweight, he's slow, he's not what he used to be, but he's still charismatic as hell, so I'd like to see more of that. Marcus, what do you think of Shark Boy before we move on to the Feast or Fire portion?
No, it was great to see. I would have thought he would have been a little more stone sharky, or maybe he's saving that for more next week. Like I said, I always was entertained by Shark Boy and the whole Shark Stone ordeal, but I had never, for whatever reason, seen that clip that you sent me until you sent it to me with the whole Angelina Love exchange.
Angelina Love, you dirty slug.
Which is an all-time moment. It's an all-time moment. But it was brilliant. Yeah, but yeah, that was cool. And I think we're going to get, now that he's been like the deputized, I guess you will, as a authority figure, I think we're going to get some more of that panache, if you will, because obviously he's going to, have to kind of turn it up. So I'm looking forward to that. And it was cool to see James Storm and Chris Harris, who we always, dig seeing, classic legendary tag team with Impact. And just good to see Storm. And then obviously I guess he had some scuttlebutt coming out of this whole wrestlers thing, but I didn't really too much pay attention to it. But yeah, cool backstage segment, and EY again kind of just, even in his role, it's just, I think he's really like taking it all in and basking in it, because he's been that ass long as somebody like D'Amore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, when it comes to James Storm, we'll talk more about him next week when we talk more about OVW next week. But
Yeah.
with us on a bit of a time constraint, that's going to have to wait. The Feast or Fire match returns. It was what it was. I won't go too crazy into the recaps, but there are some interesting spots. But the most interesting one was at the end when Macklin gets the briefcase. Rhino returned, and who's now also working as a producer. Gord
Nice.
Macklin, the briefcase, I think it was Macklin, and the briefcase flies out of his hands, and Moose catches it, signifying that there's 4 people who have won the briefcase. There's Chris Bay, Crazy Steve, Yuya Uemura, and Moose. So now in these briefcases contains one of 4 things: a world title shot, a tag team title shot, a next division title shot, or a fired championship for you Curry Man fans out there. So one of these guys will no longer be wrestling on Impact TV, at least under their current personas, because Daniels lost the Feast or Fired match. I want to say, I think he lost it like the first or second one, and then he became Curry Man. Then Curry Man lost it, and he reverted back to Daniels. So here's my prediction. There we go. For the briefcases, I think Moose gets the tag title shot. I think now. All right, I'm gonna do one of 2 ways. Moose is getting the tag title shot, and Crazy Steve's getting the X Division title shot. Depending on Yuya Uemura and the longevity of him and Joya heading forward, either Yuya gets the world title match, meaning Bay is done with the company, or Bay gets the world title match, meaning Yuya is done with the company. And I think it's more likely, if we're being honest, it's going to be Bay with the world, Steve with the X, Moose with the tag, and Yuya getting the walking paper so he can go back to Japan. Because I think, because he's been with the company for at least 6 months, right? It's got to be at least 6 months. Playing my theme music. I think
But yeah, it feels like 6 months.
at least it's got to be at least 6 months. So I feel like Yuya's excursion to the States has to be coming to an end. So it would make sense that he would go back to New Japan and become the next in line to take over for Hiroshi Tanahashi with the good hair. It's going to go
Yeah, I
from
mean,
Hiroshi with the good hair to Yuya with the good hair.
yeah, cause yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's it. That is a trend over there. Cause I think several people finna go back to New Japan because they got some tournaments coming up. So you know how that tends to go.
So it makes
Um,
and with the New Japan Impact show coming up, or maybe it's not a show, but they have that 6-man tag with Okada, Hiroshi, and who is it, Goto?
yeah.
Let me see.
Shout out to
I actually have it pulled up because we're going to talk about it here in a second.
shout out to Okada, the Rainmaker, making his feelings plain.
And we're going to talk about that later. It's Ishii, Hiroshi, Tanahashi, and Okada. They're taking on the Machine Guns and Josh Alexander. I think it's going to be Destruction in Ryogoku. So I would imagine that they're going to bring Yuya back from the States around that time. That'd be my thought. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. Marcus, how do you think the briefcase is going to play out?
Hopefully, like you said, because what you said that it's Chris Bay, it's Crazy Steve, it's Moose, and Yuya, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that only makes sense. Um, that was a cool little moment to see Rhino come back and did kind of like a close corners gore, and Macklin was perfect with the timing of the release. Looked like it literally flew out his hand, which it did, and Moose caught it. So I'm hoping it goes like that because I'm like, as I was talking with somebody else about like kind of be one of the stupidest things in the world to have Moose with the 5 briefcase, considering the fact that he basically just got the Mahomes contract.
Mm-hmm.
So
4 or 5 year deal. So
yeah. So and Steve is a good wild card to put, like you said, on the X division specifically where that particular picture is after this show, by the end of the show, I should say. And yeah, with I think somebody like Bay going 1-on-1 with somebody like Shelley or um Alexander, who knows, will be a uh great matchup. I mean, God knows they've been certainly been going against somebody like Shelley enough in tag teams, you know. So that'll be interesting. But hopefully that is how it plays out because it historically that particular gimmick has been used to either allow people a logical exit on screen or, like you said, allow somebody to transition into another character. So it only makes sense, you know, to allow you, like you said, to go leave excursion or something like that.
So the only other idea I had was that maybe Moose is the one getting let go, so he could do some type of talent exchange with New Japan. So like the idea would be that Moose would lose the Feast or Fire and then would go to New Japan for 4 or 5 months, still under an Impact contract, but as part of the work relationship that they have with Moose. Or it might be akin to that AJ Styles storyline at the end of 2013, start 2014, before he left the company, where Moose is running amok and destroying people, trying to get back into Impact. Like I could see it being a storyline firing as well, but
Yeah,
we'll see which one ends up happening because we'll find out the results Thursday.
yeah. I was going to ask to your recollection because you be able to recall it deeper than me. I mean, I've seen a lot of those instances, but how many times have we seen hijinks with the switching of the case before the reveal?
A lot.
Like, yeah. So we'll see if they try to do something like that.
Thankfully, though, I don't think we're gonna get any more nonsense like that. Although it would be great to build a character around like Eddie Guerrero's lie, cheat, and steal. And I don't want to say it'd be great for Chris Bay because that seems a little bit that's what I'm looking for, a little bit on the nose. But it could be funny if you have the right personality to pull it off. And I think Bay of the 4 is the only one that it would make sense for. Although there are more impressive names you could think of going forward. But that's just, they're not involved, so it doesn't really matter. GM Miller interviewed Chris Sabin, who wants to become the first ever 10-time X Division champion by defeating Leo Rush. Solid little promo. Then we get Rohit Raju is backstage, if I remember, or I think it was Rohit was back. No, maybe they were already in the ring. It was Rohit and Champagne were already in the ring.
Yeah.
So Rohit Raju returned to the company. I would like to see Rohit stick around for a little while, especially I think the company needs more tag teams. So I'd like to see him back, but we'll see what ends up happening here. Team
Mocha Skin
3D
Man.
returned. They beat up the former Desi Hit Squad, and then they put Singh through a table with a 3D. Or no, they put Rohit through a table with a 3D after they got the win. Um, it was a nice little segment. It popped the crowd, but if you're thinking about running Champagne and Rohit as a tandem, I think you missed an opportunity to put them over here. I think Team 3D, especially if Bully Ray and Devon are going to... Now, see, like, them signing legend contracts with the WWE doesn't mean they can't work in Impact. I think a lot of people think that. That's not how it is. Because Devon's even saying, like, I'm open to doing more with Bully in Impact. So, like, who knows how long they're going to be in Impact, or if it was a one-night thing, if they'll come back for more. But I feel like if it was a one-off time, and if Bully's almost done with the company, I think you could have put the Desi Hit Squad over, depending on how long Rohit's here. If Rohit is also a one-nighter, you did the right thing. But if Rohit signed a new contract with the company and is back with them, they screwed up by not putting over the Desi Hit Squad. But that's my opinion. Mark, any thoughts on the return of Team 3D?
Yeah, it's cool to see Team 3D. Obviously Legends. Well, I don't think they've ever been my favorite tag team. I've been more akin to guys like the Hardys and ENC and stuff like that. But obviously, legendary across the industry. Cool to see them. Also went through all the emotions or whatever. It was probably cooler to me to see the Mocha Skin Manimal back. Because I became a real big fan of him during his X Division run. I really feel like he's breaking out. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. But even if he has signed a new contract, I don't know with just the pomp and circumstance of the night if they were gonna give the narrative to the new tag team instead of letting the OGs go out with the victory. So
And all that's fair. On the surface, all that's fair. The night's more about celebration than it is about getting over other talents. So I get that. I really do. We then move on and we get a backstage segment with Josh Alexander and the Rascals. Josh doesn't like their shenaniganry, and it feels like maybe we'll be getting Josh Alexander versus the Rascals for a little bit. I think they announced it was going to be next week. It's going to be Alexander versus Wentz. So that should be interesting. Then we do a really great promo with Alexander and Shelley. I really feel like Shelley's about to turn heel, and maybe he should, because him being a dick has always been his best flavor. Like, Sabin is the good guy hero. Like, Sabin doesn't work well as a heel. He's very Ricky Steamboat, in my opinion. He's the guy that's always tried very hard. He's always been, like, looking up at Styles and Daniels and Joe, and then he was looking at Bully and what have you. And I feel like Sabin's always been the guy that, like, you book as the hero. I feel like Shelley's a better villain. Just looking at what they're doing, or like historically what they were doing with guys like Kevin Nash, Jerry Lynn, and all that, Shelley worked really well as Nash's toady. So I'd like to see more of Shelley as a heel champion, and I think that's going to be something to look forward to if that's the direction they go. And if they do turn him heel heading into Bound for Glory, I hope he retains.
I dig it. Everything you just said, particularly because of how the night ended, which would lean more towards a natural slice of the pie, if you will, because obviously these would be two solo things now. It wouldn't necessarily be a need to, keep bringing them back together, because to your point, Sabin has always worked better as a face and come off better as a face. And Shelley, I just think it like, to your point, you're right. It has been a natural build, starting with that whole, starting with that whole thing, and now it's kind of like, obviously you've had him even before he was champion, rattling off his accolades naturally, and rightfully so, and saying that, like, all the guys that you cheered for, they're as good as they are because I'm the one who trained them. I'm the one who gave them the guidance. I'm the one who set them up to put them in place to get to where they are. I'm the blueprint for all this. Especially, somebody like Alexander, that, like you said, it was a great segment, him calling it, like, you're a fan of me or you're a stan, a flat scan, or, a mark. for me. Like he's really in his whole like I'm tired of playing nice. I'm tired of being humble. Y'all gonna kiss the veterans ring and like it. And I'm digging the energy because Josh is on something like I'm gonna be humble, man. Right now, when I get you in that ring, I'm dog walking you, and Shelly's on the whole go for it. So I really appreciate how they've kind of flipped the energy that even from when Shelly was a contender, like this is a whole new attitude that he's going in here with. And to your point, him turning him heel, it may be one of those situations where it's like he didn't beat him when he was the contender. He damn sure not finna lose to him a second time to lose the belt. So you can see some heel tactics going there to keep it. And then, obviously, we saw how great Alexander was in the chase towards Moose, so you kind of play that over. So, it seems like the logical booking, and it seems like that's the path that the whole company's been on, but we have been fooled before, so we're going to leave a little cushion in there if I was going to be wrong. But for the fact that they even put the title on Shelly, I think we can have a vote of confidence.
They do know what they're doing. They've booked a real strong year so far. So if they decide to pivot and go with Shelley retaining, I don't have a problem with that. Especially considering that Alexander, for the most part, has been, I think, one of the better workers they have. But I wouldn't necessarily say that Alexander. I think Alexander is more of a Bret Hart than he is a Shawn Michaels. He's more of a modern Eddie Edwards. Like he's the worker that you want to put the belt on for stability, but I don't think you're drawing bigger gates with him at the top. I think you might with Shelley, not necessarily like going from 2009 to 18,000, but maybe 2,500, maybe 2,800. I think Shelley may be able to help move the needle as a heel, but only time will tell in seeing if that happens, if it does. Like, we got to see it. I mean, we don't know. Then we move on to the mixed tag match. We had some minor stuff. We had Shark Boy informing Trey Miguel. Oh, it's Trey Miguel versus Josh Hogan next week. And then Kenny King demands a rematch against Tommy Dreamer, but Santino denies it. And we'll face Eric Young instead at the next episode. Then we have Alicia and Eddie versus Frankie and Kazarian. A fine match. It was fine. Best way I can describe it. Tracy was never a great worker. And now in her late 40s, you can tell she doesn't have the athleticism she used to have. Still looks great, though. Alicia, not a great worker, but she tries. Eddie and Frankie are still great. I don't know how they're both still great. Eddie's, he's slower, but if he just worked on his diet, he wouldn't be. And Frankie's still great. Just 46, I think, and still great. Solid little tag match, but the real moment at the end, it wasn't about the match itself, which I think, this ends the feud. I don't think we're getting another match between them. But the moment that really mattered the most was when, after Frankie and Tracy got the win, Frankie pointed to the screen and, in a roundabout way, helped introduce Tracy to the Impact Hall of Fame, which I think is well deserving.
No, absolutely. It was a beautiful moment. Like I said, I can appreciate, going back to the match for a minute, that they made that feud more about like actual historical context, going back to the fact that both of them were trained by Kowalski and how that divide in terms of mentality and teachings, and one person's betraying the memory of the legend and this, that, and the third. Because it could have been easy just to play this up as, two opposing couples and just let that almost reality show type of BS drama play out, but they wanted to have more than that, so that was great. Just having Tracy back in the mix was great. Like I said, I think this has been a great spotlight for Lish. Always been wanting her to get more. She's clearly been having a lot of fun. But also, like you said, the studs in the match were always going to beat Edwards and Kazarian. But ultimately, I think he's had a great run since he's been back. And I don't know if you could ask for anything better than for him to actually get a chance to, introduce his wife, like you said, to the Hall of Fame, when well deserved. Like I said, again, we talked about them and putting in the legendary all-time duo of Mike Tenay and Don West, and another deserving candidate is Tracy Brooks. So again, they haven't missed it. That was a really cool moment.
I think when it comes to Tracy, one of the things that we should mention and acknowledge is that she wasn't the first female wrestler, manager, or what have you, to be booked by Impact back in 2002. I don't think she debuted until 2004, but she often gets the moniker of the original Knockout, which I think
Yeah.
is fair in the context of the division. But
Yeah.
also, you had like Trinity was in the company before Tracy, and just an acknowledgement of that would also be nice. But Tracy's earned this. She wasn't a great worker, but she was a part of the original Knockouts division. She was a great manager for Matt Bentley, for Frankie, for Bobby Roode. She did that for about a year, if not longer. She was great in that Karen Angle gimmick, where Karen Angle was in charge of the Knockouts division, and Tracy was
Yeah.
dealing with her bullshit. I thought that was great. So like she's
That was
had a lot
great.
of memorable moments that I think has solidified her
Yeah,
placement into the hall.
And for the listeners, real quick, when you say Trinity, you mean
Sorry, more than one Trinity. Trinity, the former ECW WWE manager, and I think she actually managed against. That was another storyline I forgot Tracy was in. She managed against Tracy in 2005 when Dusty's like, listen, you guys find a tag team, you guys will have your tag team wrestle, and whoever wins will get like a title shot, or like will get or something like that. Trinity got Phi Delta Slam, who would go on to be the bodyguards for the main event Mafia, and I forgot who Tracy got. Like the Harris Brothers, I think. I think they got the Harris Brothers. The Harris Brothers stuck around for a little bit, much to my chagrin. All right, so then we get to Leo Rush. He puts over the main event. Leo's a great promo. He really is. Great promo.
Yeah.
Rush. Then we got the announcement of what's happening next week, and we'll take a moment to preview it here right now. We got Alexander going on one-on-one with Trey Miguel. That should be a banger of a match.
Yep.
I think it'll further focus on a potential feud between the Rascals and Alexander heading into Bound for Glory. They're not going to face off at Bound for Glory. We know that they're going with Alexander versus Shelley. Shouldn't say we know. We assume. They might be doing a longer, drawn-out feud between the two past Bound for Glory into 2024, giving Shelley maybe someone like Crazy Steve to feud with. But then again, with Bound for Glory being in Chicago, they're probably looking to get 4, maybe 5,000 people in for the show. I think they want to go with a bigger headlining act than Crazy Steve. And I feel like Steve still needs to be built up significantly to even get to that point. So, like, who knows what they're doing right now? Unlike other companies, Impact doesn't telegraph its main events too often.
Yeah. What's the time limit on the cash-ins? A year, or there is none?
I don't think there is one, but like we'll say a year. I think that's fair. I think Steve will cash in if he does win the world title, briefcase. I think he'll cash in well before Slammiversary. I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah.
So then we also have, let's see, Eddie taking on Kenny King. I'm looking forward to that. Who knows what? Like, I don't know what they're gonna do with Eric, because like he's trying to do good guy babyface, and he hasn't really always been good guy babyface. Like after like he won the world title, he's been almost predominantly a heel. But I think Eric Young would be great in a more darker role. But I don't know if they're going to go in that direction. Who knows? Like they have a lot of guys that make sense to have on the roster but aren't in the right positions, and I think Eric Young might be in that position, but he might not be. Who knows? Jake Something's going to take on Dirty Dango. I think this is a big opportunity for Jake Something to get a big win, but who knows what's going to happen there. Dirty Dango and Alpha Bravo, love that, are two of my favorite gimmicks right now going, so could be anyone's ball game. We're going to get the Feature Fired match. Dave LaGreca of Busted Open Radio is going to be hosting the event. Somebody mentioned on Twitter, and it's true, Dave LaGreca, Bully Ray, and Tommy Dreamer are the faces that run the places in Busted Open with Mark Henry. And 3 out of the 4 guys are in Impact, and they never talk about Impact. That's kind of stupid, but what are you going to do? We also have the return of the Ultimate X. It's going to be Ace Austin versus Zachary Wentz versus Rich Swann, Alan Angels, Mike Bailey, and Sam Ray Del Sol. The winner will become the #1 contender for the X Division title. I think there's a big opportunity for someone like Swan or Ace Austin to get another win, but I think it's going to go to Alan Angels, which will just irk me to no end because I don't know why he has a job in this company. All right, let's see. Then we have Trinity, Jordan Grace, Mickey James, Gail Kim, and Austin Pong taking on Deanna Pratt, Tasha Steele, Giselle Shaw, Savannah Evans, and Elaine Julian Love in the greatest fight in Knockout's history. Marcus, what are you looking forward to the most in next week's show?
So glad you asked. Obviously, the Alexander Miguel. I know I'm probably higher on Miguel than you, but I do think both of them have had a slew of really good matches. Alexander's yet to have a bad match, and I don't feel like these two have clashed before. And if they have, it's been in tag team situations. So this is going to be, I think, probably a sleeper hit. Obviously, looking forward to that X Division Ultimate X. Does that include Kevin Knight?
No, Kevin Knight's not in the Ultimate X.
Okay, and neither is Jake something.
Yeah, Jake something's facing off a Dirty Dango in a different match on the card.
Gotcha. So they really are leaving it to the X guys. Yeah, looking forward to that. Like I said, Alexander and Miguel, and obviously the women's, man. Just looking forward to seeing what's if some of the OGs are gonna surprise us with more activity than we're expecting. And obviously, the young guns are gonna show out. But I'm looking forward to seeing a healthy mix of just how the match is booked, because that can be just a whole lot of forgettable traffic going on. But Impact does this great thing, specifically with the X Division, of having these busy matches that still entertain and make sense to a point. That's got everything to do with the talent, obviously. But yeah, definitely. I would imagine they're gonna let the women close the show. So
they invested a lot of money in that main event, so I feel like they're not going to do anything but close the show.
Yeah.
So that's a solid point that tracks, Marcus. Tracks quite a bit. Then we get the main event. It's Chris Sabin versus Leo Rush. He main evented Impact #1, and now he's main eventing Impact 1000. I don't remember the main event of the first Impact. I'm sure it'll be great though.
Yeah.
This was a good match. I did like this match. Leo Rush is. What did Jim Ross always say? He's sudden like a hiccup, quick like a hiccup.
Yeah, quicker than a hiccup. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically Leo Rush in a nutshell. So I'm very much on board with Sabin again as X Division champion. I didn't like him losing the belt in the first place, and mostly because Impact's, and credit to them, they're using their New Japan connections very well. But we should also point out that it is a New Japan connection that they're using. Leo Rush is not an Impact wrestler, so you can't really expect him to come in and stick around long term because you don't know that he's going to. So I'm all right with the change back to Sabin. I think it makes sense. I think maybe him losing the belt was all to build up to the main event of Impact 1000 Part 1. And if that's the case, then great. Sabin gets the win with the Cradle Shock. 10-time X Division champion. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. He is the greatest X Division wrestler of all time, in my opinion. He's done more Ultimate X matches than I think, or at least at a time, there was a time where he had done more Ultimate X matches than anyone else. He's won the belt more times than anyone else. I think he's had the belt longer cumulatively than anyone else. Sure, Styles has had more 5-star matches, but I don't think that's necessarily the end-all be-all for a competent top guy. Who's the best athlete to ever play quarterback? It's not Tom Brady, but he's got 7 rings or 6 rings, whatever it is. So can you really say he's not the greatest quarterback of all time? The goal is to win the title. Sabin has won the title. He's got 10 of them.
Yeah, it's also interesting too, because I feel like some of the best guys when we talk about complete, because once JJ transitioned away from the X Division, he never went back. And I feel like some of the best champions, or the best guys can oscillate up and down the roster at any stage of the career as long as it makes sense. Like we've seen what Cena did when he eventually, had that great one with the U.S. strap. I feel like Saban is somebody who can do that, who can oscillate between the tag team, the world title picture, and then go back to the X division, and it still all makes sense. Um, so I mean that's great, like you said. I mean the numbers alone. If you don't want to give it to him for quality of matches, you got to give it to him for the numbers alone. And we all know people lie, but the numbers don't. Great match. Love everything Leo's been doing. This whole bad child gimmick is perfect for him. Love this new side of the fence that he's on. Like a couple years back, we didn't even know if he was still gonna be wrestling, let alone having this type of run. So this has been brilliant to see. And to your point, wasn't necessarily a fan of him dropping it, but I appreciated the way that they did it because it wasn't one of those things where they had like a 25-minute barn burner and then they took it off. I'm like, no, he literally caught him slipping in every possible way, played into Leo Rush using these, the bad child tactics, if you will, and he didn't really give him any room to breathe. And Shelley made a decision to keep going, which ultimately backfired on him, and then he's been chasing him ever since. So if that was all done to build towards this, which I'm hoping that was the narrative, that was just brilliantly executed. And with, like I said, Rush looking like he's about to head back to Japan, all this has also been beautifully timed. So, yeah, man, main event at the first show and main event at the 1,000 show. You don't get better full circle than that,
So we went longer than I thought. I'm gonna have to work on that echo for some reason. We went longer than I thought, so we're gonna save everything else for next week because I got to get rolling. Marcus, any final thoughts on Impact 1000?
Just congrats to Impact, man. It's been a long time, a lot of ups and downs. It feels like people counted the company out at least 1,000 times, if not more. And look, man, 1,000 episodes of TV is nothing to scoff at, specifically in this landscape when we seeing shows get canceled before the first season is even done airing. So 1,000 episodes, regardless of what people want to say about Impact, is nothing to scoff at. And this felt like a thank you letter to the fans as well as themselves for getting here.
You ain't wrong. So we're heading off here. Be sure to follow us on the website, realnerdcorp.com, REALNERDCORP.com. We're on Twitter at NERDCORP. We are on our socials individually at Paradox Kid for Marcus. That's PARADOXKID.
That's me.
You can also find them on his other podcast, The True Penny Show. They cover a lot more international stuff. That's The True Penny Show on Twitter, or X, at TRUEPENNYSHOW, True Penny Show. Check them out. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHEDNERDCORP, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo at CHEDSPHOTOHUT. Be sure to check in next Monday for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. We're going to review Impact episode 1001, talk about OVW, talk about Masha Slamovich. We're going to talk about all the things we didn't get to tonight. Next week, Monday, 10 p.m.-ish, Eastern Standard. Check us out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.